Good evening, golfers, and welcome to my webinar series, Tuesday Traces. The purpose of this webinar is to show how the V1 pressure mat, powered by Boditrak, is used. Welcome to everyone that registered and to all the folks tuning in to the V1 Sports Facebook Live channel. Please remember that we record these webinars, and if you signed up today, we will be sending you an email with a link to this recording. Also, my team will share contact information in the chat windows in both the Zoom and the Facebook channel for our host and myself if you have any follow-up questions that we missed tonight. Please, during our webinar tonight, ask us as many questions as you want. We will answer the good questions and we'll save the silly questions for later. Last week I gave away an iPad during the webinar. Tonight I'm giving away a one-year software credit valued at $300 each to the first golf professional and the first consumer that are tuned in tonight and purchase a pressure mat. That means that if you purchase a mat tonight, you get software for free for a year. In order to claim that, feel free to email me at mandy.vonc@v1sports.com or sales@v1sports.com. A little bit about V1 and our relationship with Boditrak before I get into introducing our awesome host. V1 Sports is a 25-year-old company and the leader in delivering video analysis and instruction solutions to golfers and golf instructors around the world. A few years ago, the team from Boditrak Medical reached out to my team at V1 Sports requesting a software integration. Our dev team, who is absolutely the best in the business, was able to integrate the pressure mat data with the V1 Sports software, and we are able to support both the pressure mat and the software from our headquarters right up in Novi, Michigan. I am personally very proud of our partnership with Boditrak and my relationship with Terry Hashimoto. He's the developer of the pressure mat, and he is a great resource for me and for all of you. If you have technical questions, please let me know, and I am happy to get Terry on the line to answer things that I don't know how to answer. The technologies integrate, they're made in the USA. We're really proud of that partnership. I am Mandy Von C, if you don't know already. I do this every Tuesday night. I am a sales manager for V1 Sports based in beautiful Charleston, South Carolina. I absolutely love my job because I get to work with the best clients and put the coolest technology in their hands. I have to share this. I am taking a side note, but just this afternoon, I received an email from a new client in Nebraska. I'm going to read you what he said to me in the email because I think it's pretty spectacular. This is what David says. All I can say is thank you so much for helping me get the pressure mat, and wow, I have dropped my handicap from 0 to plus 2.5 in 3 weeks. I have had about 10 friends on it, and they have all come away in awe. One guy said with tremendous excitement, "You changed my life." They all set up with too much weight on the right and were very toe heavy on the backswing. I used the tennis ball under the right toe. I had one guy make about 10 practice swings, then he hit one. He said, "I have never hit a ball like that before." So much fun. Thank you for sharing that, David. I love that quote. Quotes like this are why I do this and why I totally believe in this product. I love that you use the tennis ball drill. We learned about that a few weeks ago from Jake and Jim. We talk about lifting the toes all the time. That is not something you can figure out without a pressure mat. I myself am a beginner golfer. I'm not a golf instructor. I am super passionate about great customer service and being a part of a great team. I get to put this awesome technology in the hands of golfers and golf instructors all over the world. And with the rest of you joining us, I get to learn about how we can improve our swings by understanding how we are interacting with the ground. That brings me to our guest, my co-host. Tonight, I am joined by Keith Bennett. He is a Class A PGA professional based in Seattle, Washington at the Golf Club of Newcastle. Keith, thank you so much for cutting your teaching day short to join us this afternoon. I know it's 7 p.m. on my side of the country, but it's still teaching time in Washington. Thank you so much for being here and doing this with me. I know we're going to get a lot out of our time with you. And I'd love to just ask you a few questions about how you got started before we dive into your videos. But thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
No, my pleasure being here. Thank you so much for the invite. And yeah, we're still cruising over here on the West Coast, middle of the afternoon, but absolutely my pleasure to be joining you. And I'm looking forward to the chat.
Awesome. Thank you. This is going to be fun. Okay, so before we look at your pressure mat videos, I'd like to just sort of get to know you a little bit better.
Sure.
And a little birdie told me that you were formerly a competitive snowboarder. So I'm curious how other sports, specifically snowboarding, have influenced your golf instruction.
Wow, you did not lie when you said that you dredged up some of my relationships from the past there. I'm impressed. That's some good research.
And I will tell you, and all of our audience, we have a bunch of people that have joined us on Zoom. I'll tell you, everybody knows I do this, and I mentioned to a couple people, or they asked me who I was hosting with tonight, and Keith Bennett was my answer. And multiple people today know you from all other parts of the country and said, do you know this about Keith? One of the things was that you were a competitive snowboarder. I found it super fascinating.
Yeah, that was kind of my first foray into professional sports, if you will. And it was definitely my first passion growing up. So I'm from Vermont, Stowe, Vermont, which is a mountain town to the core. Very, very small golf season, maybe 4 or 5 months at best before things kind of start to shut down. So it's definitely maybe a little bit of a summer activity, but nothing that was super major in my life. Now, my brother David is a PGA professional. He's played in the PGA National Professional Championship a couple times, really good player. So that's always been in my family. However, I was way more passionate about snowboarding growing up. Did it, all my friends were doing it, so that's what I wanted to do. And it's definitely, I say, more recently started to sculpt my view on how I teach, the wording I use, how I've started to really dive into the brain/body connection of everything, the visualization process and all that, how that plays in, because I can definitely tie that right into how I was able to perform on a snowboard, which is very visualization heavy as far as visualizing the tricks and the turns you're about to make and everything along those lines. So I'd say it's definitely played a pretty big part in my teaching, whether I know it or not. But I think I've started to more understand how those two things kind of mesh right now.
I think it's really fascinating, specifically for snowboarding. And I say that because I was at a wakeboarding lesson with my 10-year-old last week. And the instructor said, you need more weight in the back heel. And I said, well, we see that, right? With the weight coming out of off the bottom of the board. We can't see that when the golf swing. So when I heard that you were a snowboarder, I thought that was fascinating. And I figured it's had some sort of, connection to your golf instruction. Really, really cool. And has your brother been, do you teach your brother? I'm curious.
No, my brother's actually 13 years older than I am. So I came around in the family as a surprise. And so he was almost more of that, I wouldn't say father figure, but definitely like old enough where I was kind of watching him, learning from him. I think my earliest golf lesson, if you want to call it, was definitely from him. So I take a lot of my teaching stuff from what he taught me, which is very kind of in that Bob Rotella, Harvey Penick of very visualize it. If you need to learn how to hit a fade, put an alignment stick out there on your target line and learn how to start that ball left and see it go right, and learn how to start it right and see it go left type thing. And I think that really resonated with me the more I thought about it, and the more I thought about how I was snowboarding and just how I approach daily life as far as being a little bit more athletic in the golf swing and playing golf. Very visualization heavy, very using the eyeballs to kind of see things. And so I'd say that's definitely helped mold my instruction and myself as a player over the last 10 years or so.
Is he your only brother? There's got to be some heated golf games in there.
I have an older brother. I have a brother who's 2 years older than David. But the last time David and I got together, I think I won. So I'm still holding the trophy from the last time we got together. But he recently qualified for the upcoming National Professional Championship. So mine's coming up in 2.5 weeks. I think my tournament is. So I'm a little extra motivated to make it so we can be in that tournament together. I think that'd be pretty neat. Pretty cool.
Well, I'm glad tonight in our recorded webinar, we've captured that you still have the trophy in the family. So
yes, yeah. Emphasize that in the notes for sure.
We will. We'll make sure in the script we detail that Keith, not David, has the family trophy at the moment. We got it.
Right. Perfect. Yeah. No, it's perfect.
Okay. In the spirit of this week, in most of the country, schools have started back. We know that more people are playing golf right now because of COVID. It's one of the only things we can do. Talk to me a little bit about your interaction with juniors and how you're sort of supporting growing the game. I think it's important this week specifically. How do you talk to parents? How are you encouraging juniors? Tell me about your junior lesson business.
Yeah, it's definitely increased quite a bit over the last couple of months, as you were saying, with all of the recreational sports group activities that have not been able to take place. kids absolutely need to be getting outside. Now, we would love to be doing some group type stuff right now, but with the regulations, it's just not possible for us at the moment here in Seattle. Hopefully that's going to lift as we keep going on. But the one-on-one lesson stuff has definitely picked up. And my approach with juniors and growing the game is very much letting them play. I don't try to get super structured with them. I don't get I don't get very technical as far as my adult lessons go. So I get even less technical with my juniors. We spend a lot of our time out on the golf course. So not a ton of time hitting balls, more time learning how to play the game, learning how to pick your targets, early on, learning about a pre-shot routine and the visualization process, learning how to play one shot at a time. And I like the juniors just to be out on the golf course as much as possible. Now at Newcastle, here at the golf club at Newcastle, it's fantastic. We have 36 championship holes. So we have plenty of space on property to do just that and get on the golf course without interrupting play too much. But it's been a busy summer with juniors coming out, but I've had the opportunity to work with more competitive juniors. I think as I integrate more things like the Boditrak into my teaching, those upper level junior golfers are finding that to be more valuable. And, I'm still learning how to use the Boditrak, and, I'm only a couple months in since I grabbed one from you. So I'm still learning, but it's been cool to almost just kind of let them teach me, so to speak, let them be kids, measure what they're doing on the ground, and then kind of sit back and study it and go, okay, what is he doing there? He's obviously creating as much club head speed as he possibly can. How is he doing that? Where is he jumping up off the ground type thing? So it's been fun. I've learned a lot more from them than probably I've even taught them.
That's cool. And that's a great point. A lot of golf pros ask me, they're like, how do you figure out how to use it? And the first thing I say is get on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And your swing really well. Like that's where to start. And then put some of your players that you know really well. And then just start reading the traces and start recognizing and see what happens and use it, play with it. And so I like to hear, last week we heard Mike Sullivan doesn't spend too much time actually diagnosing the trace. He's just looking at the trace and getting that feedback and then saying, okay, what am I going to do with this particular golfer versus, a whole bunch of training and certifications. It's a really great tool to be able to take out on the course and use.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to hear that you're doing that as well. Okay. So, we were introduced by a mutual friend, Matt Krotz. I don't know if Matt's tuning in tonight. He's another golf instructor. How did he show it to you? Did you just see him use it? My question is, what was your aha moment that I got to add this to my toolbox? Other than Matt calling you and saying, hey, you should add this to your toolbox. Like what made you make the decision?
Yeah, that's actually a good question, because to be honest with you, I was more on the apprehensive side to get super into the screens and the iPads and the numbers. And, I had seen that be a little bit more distracting for some people. But then I kind of realized watching Matt teach and kind of thinking about it, that if you let the technology be in the background, it's almost like, if you're going to go to a doctor to get a diagnosis, would you go to the doctor who's got the MRI machine, or would you go to the doctor who's just going to take a guess at you by looking at you, right? You want to go get the MRI. You want to know what's going on. And watching him teach and kind of overhearing what he's saying, also asking my own questions, getting on the pressure mat myself, having those sort of realizations, I was like, I can kind of keep with my philosophy of being as uninvasive as possible in my lesson, but also having this awesome information that I physically, I can't physically see what's going on the ground. You can't see the pressure. You can make a guess at it, but until you actually know, and like you said, I can view it on my phone or my iPad and then watch them make 10 or 12 more swings, come up with the one or two things that I'm going to give them in this lesson that I think are going to make the biggest impact on their swing. And that's just information that I wasn't able to use before. And so simply getting it has been very, very opened my eyes to a lot of different things that influence the golf swing that, maybe I was kind of being naive about, or just wasn't thinking it was necessary. But watching it also help my own game for starters, that's what really kind of pushed me over the edge, so to speak.
Yeah, I think it's funny how people think that what they're doing with the ground, and then you get on the pressure mat, you're like, well, that's not really what's happening. It's that
Yeah,
whole thing in golf that we always hear, feel and real is two different things. This is where it actually is true. This is like,
for
you
sure.
cannot see what people are doing under their feet, period, the end, ever. You guys, my team, now we've got a whole bunch of people logged in. The team is going to put Keith Bennett's contact information. Keith, we're going to share your email and all your social handles. I highly recommend that everyone follow Keith on social media. He puts really cool before and after videos, and almost every day puts a drill up. Do you make a point of putting something up every day?
I try to, yeah. I definitely try to do that. If I can keep up with it. I'm kind of finding new and more creative ways to put things on my Instagram channel without having as much free time as I used to have. Obviously, the more and more I'm getting busier and things are picking up, which is obviously a good problem to have, kind of leaves me with less time to go and film maybe a specific video and kind of find the right setting and the right lighting, blah, blah, blah. So I've kind of found more creative ways to put, I think, more, even maybe more valuable information on my page, from little snippets of my lessons, and maybe key talking points that I think a bulk majority of golfers might be struggling with. And so it almost makes it a little bit better for people when they see the lesson happening and they see the real-time experience of the student. I think it becomes more relatable as well. So yeah, I'm just trying to find more ways to keep putting stuff up there.
That's great, and we appreciate it. We sure love the V1 Pro videos that you post. Look super slick on your Instagram. And so I will tell you, I did a little more digging on your page, and I gotta say, you don't know this about me, or maybe you do, but I'm obsessed with music. I mean, absolutely. I have music playing. My team will laugh because often my audio is messed up because it's connected to my speaker. However, I know that you have a huge musician as one of your students, and I know you know I'm talking about. So my question is, besides being probably two of the best dressed golfers in you and Macklemore, I'm dying to know your story about how you met Macklemore, and just tell me a little bit about that. I'm obsessed. I want to know, has he ever been on my pressure mat? I'm dying to know the story there.
Yes, he has been on the pressure mat. We got him on there last week for the first time. So I met him through Instagram.
Really?
So last summer, I think the beginning of last summer, he was doing a tour in Europe, and I was following him on Instagram, and I saw on his Instagram story that somebody was filming him making like an air practice swing in an airport. And I just casually commented on his story, like, you need more hip turn or something like that. And he wrote back, and we started to engage a little bit. Nothing crazy. And then he sent me a swing from one of the golf courses. I think he was playing in France at the time when he was doing a show over in Paris. And I just filmed my own little diagnosis, something that he could work on. And then we kind of had some multiple back and forths there. And then after that, he came back to the States. We met up here at Newcastle. We played 18 holes, and then, we've just been in communications ever since. And he's super busy, obviously, a little less busy now. So we actually have some time to work on his golf swing. But he can't do his performances, unfortunately. But we've been able to tackle his golf swing. And then he played in the Pebble Beach Pro-Am, which was really cool. And he did well there. And he's still so new to the game. He's only,
I know, he's brand new. He's just started playing, didn't he? I mean,
yeah, he's a little over a year in, I think, maybe just over a year and a half in, which is incredible because he's doing really, really well. But obviously he's a perfectionist and somebody who demands a lot of himself. So, he's always wanting to get better. And we talk all the time about golf. We probably play golf a couple times a month. And yeah, it's been really cool getting to know him. Probably one of the most down-to-earth guys you've ever met. Has become very, very obsessed with golf and getting better. And it's been cool to see that progression of him learning the sport and falling in love with it. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
That's really cool. And thank you for sharing that. And I hope that's okay. I asked you. I mean, there were multiple,
for sure.
And at the minute I saw it, I was like, I'm asking about that. Cause I haven't actually, I've seen lots of live music, but I haven't actually seen him live. But I've been to Lollapalooza 7 times. It's kind of crazy that I haven't seen him live. I digress. Back to pressure mat. Sorry, everyone. Okay. So, my back to pressure mat, and then I'd like to get into some of your lessons. But right before that, how often do you use the mat for lessons? Which students do you always use it on? Do you only use it for certain ones? Do you always use it for certain drivers? Like, how often are you pulling that mat out during your lesson day?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely coming out every time I have a new student. Excuse me. So anytime I have a new student, I want to really get on the same page with him or her about what's going on in your golf swing. Everybody who comes to a lesson, nobody comes to a lesson who's hitting the ball great, right? So everybody comes to a lesson because they're struggling with something. So my main goal is there for the two of us to get on the same page. What's the root cause of your inconsistency, of your poor ball striking? Let's see what's happening on the ground. Let's see how that's influencing the club. Let's see how the club might be influencing the ground, but back and forth. And so we get a really nice complete picture of what is going on in that person's golf swing. And that way we can, again, give them the 2 or 3 things to go work on that we're going to make the biggest impact on their move. It might be something simple as their way too much on their toes, right? That very common thing for most beginner golfers, or whatever that case may be. But like I had a lesson this morning that I'm actually going to share where we had been on the pressure mat with him in the past, and he wanted to just do a swing check-in, like, hey, can you take a look at my swing? How's everything going? And so we got him on the pressure mat, and sure enough, he kind of had gone back to a few of the old patterns as far as his weight displacement is concerned, his pressure on the ground. And so I'm using it all the time. I mean, I use it a lot because, like you said, we can't see the pressure. We have to guess at it unless you have that there on the iPad in front of you to say for sure what's going on. So, I'm using it basically for every lesson.
Love to hear that. Thank you for that. Just real quick, because that brings me to another question. I know you teach a lot on the golf course. Do you ever take it out on the golf course?
Yeah, we do. I've actually started using it a lot for putting too. So I'll take it out on the putting green. And again, most people are out of balance to start their swing. So they're not going to start a golf swing and then magically become in balance. So even on putting, we see a lot of imbalance. We see a lot of pressure on that trail foot with putting, not 50-50, not nice and balanced there. And so I haven't gotten it out, let's say, into like the fairways or the bunkers or anything yet, but that's certainly something that I'm wanting to do. It's just depends on the course availability and how much time we have on each hole to where we can get it out there and really do a good job of doing it. Right. But absolutely, I think it's one of the coolest things about that pressure mat that Matt sold me on when we were talking about it is the fact that it is so mobile that you can just toss it on the ground. If someone's struggling with downhill, uphill, side hill shots, you can toss it on the ground, see what's going on, and really make, because when you're hitting on a turf mat, you can start to feel, okay, this is how much pressure it feels like out on my front foot versus my back foot, all that sort of stuff. But then you take them onto a fairway, which isn't a nice, flat, firm surface. And those feelings that they once generated on the mat might not be the same on the golf course. So you really want the student to be performing on the golf course more than you do on the mat. Right. So, on the hitting mat. So getting them the feeling of on the golf course is going to be super important. It's definitely something that I'm going to be doing a lot more of.
Awesome. I love that. You send me a video, that sucker in a sand trap at an uneven lie. That's what I want to see.
I will. That. Don't worry. It's going to happen.
Cool. So Keith, I'd love for you to get into some of your lessons. Sure. If you can work on getting your screen shared. Everyone, thanks for tuning in again. And Keith's going to go through some of the videos and students that he's taken and teach us a little bit about what he's doing with the pressure mat. As he does this, please share your questions. My team, they're all watching Facebook and our Zoom. They'll feed them to me and we'll interrupt Keith if we get a good question. And also just a reminder, anyone that's interested in buying a pressure mat, I would love to give away a free year of software valued at $300 each to the first golf pro and the first consumer that are tuned in that would like to purchase the pressure mat. Okay, so Keith, I am going to shut up and I'm going to let you take it away, and I will interrupt you if we get some good questions. So thank you.
Yeah, so please keep the questions coming. I think that will help to spark some good conversation. And I tried to turn my notifications off on my phone, so bear with me. Hopefully this doesn't keep happening. So we're going to start off with a student named Aaron. And if we pop this up here, this is the first video we took. And this is a super common thing we see, and I'm sure it's nothing new to a lot of people. However, it's probably the most common thing that I see from I want, not so much beginning golfers, but maybe some recreational golfers. It can feel more athletic, more powerful to kind of be on the balls of the feet / toes of the feet during the swing. But as we become more aware, and as I've started to learn more about this, it is super detrimental to how the club path moves and also the impact on the club face. So just a little background about kind of how I teach. I look for three things basically. I like to think that I kind of teach the physics of ball flight. So if we can have that golf ball contact in the center of the club face, if we can have that club face square to the target line at impact, and we can have that golf club swinging in the direction of the target, those three things, regardless of who is holding the golf club, will send a golf ball to the target. So those are the three things that I really look at. And again, these are physics principles, nothing that I've come up with. They're just the physics of ball flight. And looking at the V1 pressure mat has been invaluable for me to help people start to hit the center of the club face more, for their face to be square at impact, and then also for them to swing the club to the target a little bit more. So as you can see here, he's about 6 inches into his backswing. I caught this one a little late, but you can see well enough that, on his left foot there on the left side, we've got toe to heel on the left side, toe to heel on the right, and then left foot, right foot on the bottom. So starting out with decent pressure on his left side, about 58% over there. But you can see very heavily into both those toes. And you can kind of see how he's maybe even reaching for the ball a little bit. Mm-hmm. So as he starts his backswing back, he actually does a really good job with his club face management as far as what he does with his grip, and the club face gets into a nice spot at the top of his backswing. However, you can see very heavily into the toes mm-hmm. of his right foot. And what that does is that doesn't allow him to get enough depth with his hands, and it doesn't allow his right trail hip to open up, and his right knee stays very bent. So when we're talking about depth with the hands, if we were to drop a line here from the butt end of the club to the ground, you can see that line kind of hits in the middle of his right foot. Now with that much pressure in his toes right there, he's basically has no choice but to either go into the toes on his left foot, or he's going to go over into the heels of his left foot. Both things are going to be pretty common to produce a golf swing that is kind of outside the target line, going to be working left of the target. So again, one of the things I look for is his club is not swinging in the direction of the target, and he's not going to hit the center of the club face. So as we work this way, and you can see that the pressure is moving, the center of pressure, the white dot there in the middle of that trace, is moving above the center line. And you can see how it's going to move heavily into those left toes, and his golf club and hands are way out in front of him here at this point in the swing. And so as we work our way down into impact, you're going to see a pretty heavy toe strike right there, yep. Which again, we're going to be struggling to start the golf ball on line from there. And we're going to be struggling to predict which way it's going to curve. That club face is going to open up through impact. And then you can see that that club is really swinging pretty heavily left of the target. Mm-hmm. And so we talked about some ways that we could improve. So we got to start out by getting him more balanced. First and foremost, we got to get him so that he's 50-50 toe to heel, both feet. I'm fine with him being 60-40 left foot, right foot there to start, but toe to heels need to get cleaned up a little bit for sure. So if we take a look back, and kind of something you alluded to here at the drill we worked on. So I filmed myself this morning kind of doing a drill we worked on, and that's simply to, peel those right toes up off the mat. So we got the right toes off the mat there. Yep. And now we're going to make a backswing here. And the reason we peeled those right toes off the mat is because obviously he won't be able to put his right toes on the ground. And then when you do that there, what it does is it allows that right hip really to open up nicely, that right leg to straighten out. And then we get a lot more depth with the hands. You can see that if we drop a line from my hands down, that's well past my right heel there. So a much better environment for me to swing the club to the target, but also for me to line the center of the club face up with that golf ball. And so as we work that club down, now you can see that that golf club is working, right, basically at a 90-degree angle to my spine right there. So that's perfect. And then as we make our way in, we'll hit in the center of that club face a little bit more. And then that club can swing a little bit in the direction of the target. And so that right there is the drill that we work on. It's something that I do all the time. So very similar to that tennis ball drill that I think you were talking about earlier, Mandy.
Yep.
And just getting those right toes off the ground. Super popular drill that I use all the time because it really helps people get the sensation that they're going deep into those right heels. So if we were to back that up now and just take a look at, after we had done that. So
well, already we can see he's more balanced.
Right away, he's more balanced, right? I mean, that's glaringly obvious there. He's much more comfortable, much more relaxed looking. Still a little bit in those toes, but certainly nothing like he was earlier. And he's a little bit more 50-50 on the ground as far as left foot, right foot. So again, much more symmetrical. So he's not as out of balance. So again, I'm a big fan of starting in balance because you're not going to find balance during the swing if you don't start in balance. So now as we take that club back, you can see his trace moving much more into those right heels. So again, totally different there. And if we drop that line down, so he's added a significant amount of depth there. So he's got his hand path now more back towards that right heel. Again, going to help him. Now we're not expecting to see him, hit nice tight draws today, but we're creating an environment for him to work on and for him to help move the club a lot more effectively. So now as he starts down, that club head's going to stay behind that orange line much longer in the downswing. Still a little steep, we're working on that, but it's a much better spot here. And he did a good job of getting his center of pressure across the center line early in the downswing, so that was never an issue. But now that club, he's going to hit the center of that club face a lot more. Again, more balanced.
Yep.
And then that club's going to swing a little bit more in the direction of that target for longer. So you can see it in the frame of the camera there much longer than in the previous video. So he went from hitting very big fades to just hitting small fades. And then obviously we're going to continue working towards straighter ball flight. But, that's a huge change right there. And he was just blown away at how simple that was, but how much more easy it made it for him to swing the club.
So Keith, how long did that take you? How long did it, how many, you looked at that trace, I'm sure you showed that to Karen. How long did that take to make that change?
That was pretty quick. Once we saw it, once we got to the root cause of it, it happened really fast where I basically put I have the iPhone and the iPad going at both times. I put the iPad down there in front of him so he can see it, so he can watch the trace happen in real time, so he can make sure that he gets himself balanced, and then he can now associate that new address position with balance or being in balance, which obviously felt very different to him. Mm-hmm. So, but once he started to swing and realized that he had more mobility and could swing the club a lot more easily, more around his body, then the changes were able to cement themselves a little faster. Anything is always going to feel a little different to somebody that's new, but I find that once they start hitting the ball straight, they don't really care and they can adapt to it pretty quick. Yeah,
we're willing to make a change if it makes a better golf swing, right?
Correct. Love that. I don't get a lot of pushback on straight ball flight.
Yeah, right. So Jim Altamirano, who's tuned in tonight, and I can both attest to the environment of taking your mat out by yourself and having an iPad in front of you. Because Jim and I both have drills from very high level golf instructors, and we have mats, and I can work on it all day long, just, knowing, get off my toes, a little bit about my golf swing. So I like to highlight that if you have a mat and you kind of know what you're working on, it's really cool to take a mat out and just have that iPad in front of you, because you can see a lot and you can work on drills and try to get that yellow line. We're looking for that yellow line to be linear, right? That's the ideal position, or ideal trace, I should say.
Yeah.
Cool. That's awesome. Yeah. I bet Aaron was thrilled.
Oh, he was over the moon. And those are the most fun lessons, because he saw the change happen really quickly. The difference in the ball flight was glaringly better. And it wasn't something that was overly technical. It was better balance, right? Again, I'm a huge setup and address position proponent. I don't think that it's very easy to make a good golf swing if you start out of balance, or if you start in a setup that is going to make it more difficult for you. So again, the mat has been invaluable for me. just to put people in a better address position to give them a chance to make a better golf swing, right? If you don't start with a chance at making a better golf swing, it's going to be really hard for you to do that.
Right. Okay, we got a couple questions. One that I'll answer. Thomas, the pressure mat retails for $3,500. However, right now it is $3,000. The software for first-time users is $300. Would love to give you the free software subscription. So send me an email if you're interested. We have a couple for you, Keith. Brent, multiple, they're coming in. Brent is asking, I struggle with early extension. How does that show up on the pressure mat, and how can using the mat fix that problem? Early extension.
Yeah, early extension. Wow. We see that quite a bit there with people with a lot of pressure out on their toes during the golf swing, and moving very heavily into the left toes. They're the lead toes, right? So left toes for right-handers, the lead toes, so the front toes in the forward swing. And, if we were to back up here and kind of look at Aaron's earlier trace, a telltale sign of that is kind of right here at the top of the backswing. We've got just a ton of flex in that trail knee, right? So that trail knee is still very bent right here. So a ton of flex in that trail knee. And with that much pressure in the trail toes there, he's more likely to go onto those lead toes. And, if you were to think about it this way, can everyone, let's see, can you see me here if I stand up?
Yes. Girls, can everybody see with his screen shared? Are we good? Yeah, I can see you.
Okay. So, if you were to think about, if you were going to kind of lean over a building, right? If you were on a skyscraper and you're going to lean over a building and get way out onto your toes, your body's natural inclination is actually to suck your butt under your body like this and to lean back. So to put your spine in your center, the big center of your mass behind you to balance yourself out. So if you start out on those toes very heavily and you make a golf swing and you get even more onto your trail toes and you go onto the left toes or the lead toes, forget about swinging a golf club. As a human being, you're literally just trying to stay upright, right? That's the brain's only concern at that point, not about actually swinging the club, but physically from not falling over. From that standpoint, if you're way out into your toes here, you're going to suck your butt underneath your body. That's that early extension look. And then obviously the arms are going to extend and you're going to be losing any sort of angles you have in the wrist at impact. So when we're talking about fixing that early extension, it all comes down to making sure that you're nice and balanced at address, and then making your trace much more linear. So moving your pressure more into the middle of your trail foot and moving your pressure more into the middle of your front foot there, your lead foot. And then that at the end of the day is what's going to fix that. Now, also there could be some club movements involved with that, but it's almost like chicken and the egg. Is it the pressure trace that's causing the club to move, or is it the club that's moving the pressure trace? And oftentimes it's a little bit of both. So getting that swing to move on a better plane, but it's got to be also moving with a better pressure trace. And then that usually cleans up some early extension. So hopefully that answered the question.
I think so. I think that's great. Anna unshared your screen so that we can see your drill there. So you might have to reshare it. Okay. We have another question for you from Scott Weaver. Questions about weight distribution and how it affects the angle of attack to generate more ball speed and more distance and penetrating ball flight for mid irons during the swing. Do you want me to ask you that again?
Let's see. I think I got the question. So he's looking for what's the pressure trace essentially to create more ball speed for a lower ball flight, more penetrating flight for a mid iron. Is that about right?
Yep. Perfect.
Yeah. So when we're talking about creating more ball speed, we need a flatter surface to hit the golf ball, right? So any surface that is angled upward, the ball will be glancing off of that angle. And so you will lose ball speed, right? That's why when you hit a bunker shot, when the club face is wide open, the club is literally cutting underneath the golf ball. So there's almost zero ball speed. And so that's why you need a big swing out of a bunker to send the ball a short distance. and that's directly related. So in order to have more ball speed, you actually need to de-loft that club a little bit coming into the golf ball so that the ball can compress fully off of that flat surface and then shoot itself back out. And that's where you get the ball speed from. So in order to have more shaft lean at impact, I like to actually set you up with a little bit more shaft lean at address, but also we're going to make sure that you've got at least 55 to 60% of that pressure in your lead foot at address. Now, if you really want to lean that shaft forward at impact, we're going to see, kind of an abbreviated pressure trace. So that pressure, the trace might not go all the way into the trail foot. It might just barely cross the center line, maybe around 65, 70% of pressure into that trail foot. And then we might even see a little bit of getting to that lead side earlier. So before you even finish the backswing. And that's one of the things from this morning's lesson that I talked about is, if you wait until the end of your backswing to start pressing, getting your pressure to go forward, it's too late. So you want to start to feel like you move your pressure forward before the completion of the backswing. So you'll actually see some pressure traces from tour pros go into that trail foot early, and then it'll actually kind of bounce towards the front a little bit because they're recentering themselves and they're getting their pressure started earlier, sooner in the backswing.
Okay. A lot has to happen in the downswing, right? You gotta be making all that stuff happen fast.
A little bit, yeah. If you set yourself up for it at address, it becomes a heck of a lot easier.
Right, for sure. George is asking, do the hips move the feet or the feet move the hips?
Do the hips move the feet or do the feet move the hips?
I would say the hips move the feet, but I'm a dancer, so I'm talking about a whole different sport.
That's a good question. I want to get back to you on that one. I haven't looked too deeply into that much technically into the whole into the anatomy side of things, but I would like to answer that question and get back to. So I do want to do some more research on that because, like I said, I'm still learning about a lot of this stuff, but the Boditrak has been really helping me to unlock a lot of those things.
Cool. So George, thank you for that question. Keith would like to get back to you. So if you can send an email to me, I will connect you with Keith directly, and you guys can work that out after Keith learns a little more about that question. Yeah. Thank you for asking. Okay, can you show us some more videos, Keith?
For sure. All right. So let's see here. Cancel. We're gonna go. So this was one that I did this morning. And it's got a couple of drills associated with it. This is one we were talking about where we had this student on the pressure mat maybe a month ago, and then we weren't able to get together for a month. And it's really shocking to me, and it's even been eye-opening for myself, where before we know it, getting more pressure onto that trail foot feels more comfortable and we feel balanced. And there's that feel and that real thing you were talking about where he felt very balanced. And I asked him, do you think you're 50-50 or maybe even slightly on the left foot? I knew the answer, he did. And he said he felt balanced. And then I showed him that and he was blown away. And that's the value of this thing in its entirety, is because now he can actually see for sure. And so we threw the iPad down on the ground like I always do. And, before he hit each shot, he needed to have 55 to 60% of that pressure on that left foot. Now, our last session together was a big breakthrough for him. And it was the first time, he was actually the first student I ever put on the pressure mat. And so we had a nice breakthrough with his wedges, making sure that he was more pressure on his lead foot there. So again, and then what we're going to see here is, here we go. Making sure he gets into this swing here. So again, he does a pretty good job moving that golf club. And this is another thing that I think is super, super valuable because, if you were to look at the top of this backswing here, if you didn't have the pressure on the ground, you would probably say, oh, well, he's got, his trail leg there is straightened out. He looks like he's got a bunch of hip turn. He's got some decent depth to those hands back there. But obviously he's still got 60% of that pressure in those toes. Yep. And it was affecting his impact, right? So again, before having the Boditrak, I would have said, all looks good. and that comes down to having the resources at my disposal to actually help this guy hit the center of the club face more and to swing the club more in the direction of the target. So as he starts his downswing here, and again, we wouldn't have been able to see this right here. His pressure is actually backing up as he's going into his downswing. So obviously an issue there. Yep. And what we see a lot because of that is it really loses the angle of the shaft in relation to his right forearm. So at that point there, we'd still like to see the shaft kind of moving through his right forearm to hold that lag again, to answer that ball speed question. This would be very non-optimal for creating ball speed, where we have pressure into that right foot, into the right toes. The pressure is not getting across the center line at any point early enough. And, at impact, he's barely going to get across the center line, but you can see he's lost all shaft lean, definitely hitting the toe of that golf club pretty severely. All of his balls were starting to the right because of those toe strikes.
Yep.
And then his club was swinging to the left of the target pretty severely. And you can see that pressure trace in the center of pressure dive over into the left heel there. So his trace and his club path from the top were basically in line with one another. And so again, not having this at my disposal, I probably would have come to maybe some different conclusions. But I would have said everything looks pretty good in the backswing because I couldn't tell that he was really on his toes. And so that was one thing that was really helpful. And then for him to see that was also super, super helpful. So here's a drill that we worked on. And I like to do this one all the time. And this is simply one where when I start the swing, you'll be able to see this a little bit better. So again, starting out, he needs to still put more pressure on that left foot, even though he thinks he is. Right. But so you can see here that I've got just a little bit of an X, a kind of a 4-square grid created on the ground here. So he's standing on an alignment stick that's right through the middle of his feet, and you can see that show itself up on the pressure mat.
Right.
And then he's got an alignment stick right through the center of that. Now, our cue for him was to feel like, or to try to move the pressure back into this circle, into this square back here, and then over into this square up here. So he's actually trying to move his pressure into the right heel, into that grid back there into the right heel, and then over into those left toes to try to even out his pressure trace. And so this grid right here is something I've started to use a lot, and something that everybody at home can use if they don't have the pressure mat. Standing on an alignment stick, I think, is one of the easiest ways to be able to tell pretty quick if you're out of balance. A lot of people will feel that they're way on their toes very quickly. And so feeling that alignment stick running right through the center of the feet there is a great way to start to get a little bit more balanced in your golf swing. And so if we back this up here, as he works his way up to the top of the swing, you're going to see quite a bit more pressure going into that trail heel, which is what we were going for. Again, exaggerating it a little bit just because he had a tough time getting into that trail heel. He thought he was doing it, but he wasn't even coming close. So again, much better there. And now he still needs to get that pressure across sooner. So at about this point here, ideally, I'd like to see 65, 70, almost maybe even 80% of that pressure into the lead foot at this point, which would again help him to keep the lag in his golf swing. But all things considered, he did a much better job with his pressure, and he started hitting the center of the club face a lot more often. His ball flight started to straighten itself out as far as his starting direction is concerned. And so again, we were able to diagnose the issue along with what he was doing with the golf club and to give him some actionable things. I always, because the students don't get to take the pressure mat and the Boditrak home with them, I always try to make sure that they have a drill or a visual that they can practice on the range so that they can actively get better.
I love that. And I love that alignment stick with the quadrants. I think that makes a really cool visual as related to the pressure graph specifically.
Yes.
I know Jim Altamirano loves pressure mat drills. So he's definitely standing on his mat right now, putting alignment sticks down like that. I promise you, he's going to text me within the next 10 minutes and tell me that he's doing that. But that is really cool. Even if you don't have a pressure mat, to just get alignment sticks out, draw a square on the ground or a rectangle on the ground and really think about where your pressure is as related to what we're learning here today. That's great. That's great feedback. We have a good question. Jim Altamirano just sent a message through. He goes, "How did you know?" I told you. I'm telling you. He's like, he's awesome. Hey Jim, we know you're putting alignment 6 down, just like Keith says. Okay, David Curtis. Hey Keith, can you give the perfect percentage for the right foot and left foot, toe and heel during the backswing and downswing? Is there a perfect for a particular club? Do you know the perfect? What do you think?
I don't know that there's a perfect. I think a lot of it also comes down to what is the golfer trying to do with the golf ball? And then that comes down to how are they trying to swing the golf club? Now, one of the things that I think was really cool to learn from Jake Thurm and Terry Hashimoto was the fact that the more diagonal that pressure trace, so the bigger the difference between, that pressure trace is moving from the center line, the bigger dispersion you're likely to see with an iron shot. So the more linear that pressure trace is moving, the smaller dispersion you're likely to see with any given golf club. And again, it just depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to get somebody to hit it as far as possible with a driver, then you're more likely to see getting more pressure into that trail heel, maybe 65-70% of that trail heel, nothing so deep where they get stuck back there. And then you might see that pressure trace zip over into the lead toes and then back to the lead heel and then actually backwards across the center line, kind of that power Z trace. But with an iron, personally, I'm always going for a very linear trace. So staying very, very balanced, right? I'm a big fan of balance, so I don't like to do a ton of exaggeration. Manuel De La Torre, who is one of those, is one of the people that I've learned from, who's I think was the first recipient of the PGA America Teacher of the Year. One of the things he said that I always took away is, if you over exaggerate anything I tell you to do, you're only going to get better faster. And I try to really take that with me and keep that at heart, because what I've had experience with in the past, and we all screw up as new teachers, right? We kind of tell a student something and they come back and they've over exaggerated and you're like, oh, whoa, I just wanted to do that a little bit. And then they're doing something crazy. So I like to emphasize balance. So the more that this student right here can stay 50-50 into that trail foot and then shoot over 50-50 into that lead foot and stay very, very balanced, I don't think he's ever going to get off track doing that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Balance is key, and get a little more weight in the heels, right?
Yeah, I mean, 50-50, I like to see 50-50 toe to heel. Again, balance is the key there for me, because I've had experience in the past where I told some people to get more into the heels and they came back and they were like, literally sitting in a chair type thing. So that's when I kind of had that eye-opening moment of, if we tell you to stay 50-50, it's really hard to overdo 50-50, right? Like, you can't overdo balance. It's balance. Balance is balance, right? So I'm a big fan of making sure that they're in balance, they understand balance, and then we work on keeping them more balanced so that they don't go overboard in one direction. And then the next lesson is us correcting what I told them to do too much in the previous lesson. And so we're kind of playing that ping pong game back and forth, instead of let's work on balance and let's stay nice and balanced.
Right. That makes sense. The V1 pressure mat powered by Boditrak. Thank you for showing us the graphs. This is clearly the best graph for visual for the beginner golfer. Do you ever use the other graphs? We have a question. Ant is asking if you use the velocity. You can tap on that graph and get the other traces. Do you ever get into those? Do you ever use that?
Right. I've actually started to learn more about that. I haven't integrated it too much into what I'm doing now, but I'm starting to learn more about that. Obviously, you can see the spike in the velocity there.
Yep.
And that, he's zipping the center of mass across right there. But, if we were to show him, okay, we need that velocity to spike a little sooner, kind of right in that range right there. And it's a matter of a little bit, but I'm starting to become more and more aware of the fact that when things happen in the golf swing is super important. So just because it is happening right here at a decent clip, because it's happening so late, he's unable to keep the angles from his wrist to his club, and he loses a lot of lag and a lot of compression at the bottom. So I'm learning more about that and learning just how valuable that is. We want that change of direction to actually start to happen right in here. So a little bit sooner, so that he can get things going earlier, and then he can start to work his verticals on the ground and work himself up off his lead foot, instead of continuing to slide forward, and then he doesn't get to use the ground as much as he could. So I'm learning more about that, and then hopefully, I can come back on here on a Tuesday traces and be a little bit more expert on that. But like I said, I'm still learning, and this has been cool for me to help my students out.
Thank you. And thanks for showing that. The graph's really easy. You just tap it or swipe it to get the other graph.
It's just a double tap, right?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And so, and that's the dynamic vertical force, the third one there. And just for everybody, you guys, we're the next Tuesday trace. It's either next week or the week after. Terry Hashimoto is going to join me. Terry's absolutely the genius. He knows more about the pressure mat. He developed it. He's actually a legend. He's an absolute legend. He is my Boditrak partner. I love him very much. He was just emailing me a few minutes ago, but he's actually going to analyze a professional long drive swing. We're going to have a long driver join us. I'm not going to tell you who it is yet. I'll let my social media team tease that out. But that should be really fascinating to watch Terry and really look at some of those other graphs, because, as the partner of V1 pressure mat in Boditrak, Terry is definitely the brains behind the whole thing. That should be fun. We should all learn a lot from watching that.
I will be tuning into that one.
Yeah, it should be fun. Hopefully, fingers crossed, based on the schedule of this long driver next week. It looks like it is. So that one would be really fun. I'm not going to say who it is yet. But it was very exciting. We're all very excited. Okay, let's see. Okay, the Rod from Flint, Michigan is asking, and this will probably be our last question. We only have a few more minutes. Do you want to keep your left foot on the ground when coming through? Your left foot on the ground when coming through?
It depends on what you're trying to do. For a lot of junior golfers, we'll see them actually come off the ground with both feet because they're trying to generate as much club head speed as they actually can. And they don't even know they're doing it. They've just kind of intuitively figured out that if they jump up, they can accelerate that club head at the bottom. And so, again, I'm sure you'll see with the long driver next week that his lead foot probably is not on the ground at impact. And again, it's all depending on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to control the ball flight and flight it down, or hit a half wedge shot, or more of a controlled lower trajectory shot, then that left foot better be planted on the ground. But again, if you're trying to absolutely rip a drive like you see Justin Thomas do, Bubba Watson, all those people who get the most pound for pound out of their golf swing, then they're definitely getting that pressure ahead of the center line early, so that they can use the vertical then at that point to push off the ground and to push that left hip backwards, and to actually they'll maybe even shoot that pressure trace backwards at impact. Again, that more of that power Z pressure trace that most of the long drivers incorporate.
That's a great answer, Keith. I can tell you from 2 weeks ago, Alex Klatt analyzed Leon Fricker, who's a tour player. We looked at his irons, and he was absolutely planted on the ground with that left foot. And then we looked at his driver, and he was off his left foot. So it was exactly really fascinating. And the fact that you just answered that based on the club or where the ball's supposed to go, Leon very clearly demonstrated that. And we saw it in his trace versus, with the iron versus the driver. So that's really cool.
And I'm definitely experimenting that with myself. I'm kind of using myself as a lab rat, so to speak, and trying to improve on my velocity and my vertical forces so I can learn how to swing the club faster. Like you said, I like to experiment on myself before I ever experiment on my students. So I want to make sure that I understand it really in depth before I introduce it to them. So only 2 or 3 months into having this thing, I'm still learning, but it's definitely something that is on the next horizon for me to kind of unlock some more stuff for some people.
I love that. And we're at 8:00, so I don't want to take up any more of your time, but thank you so much for joining us. Anna, you can end Keith's screen share for us, but I really appreciate it. And everybody, please go follow Keith at Keith Bennett Golf on Instagram. If you have any questions for Keith, please send me an email and I will hook you up with him. Jim Altamirano has already sent me multiple questions. I will send him your way. He's really fun to work with. He loves his golf game. And anyone else here, if you're interested in the pressure mat, please let me know. I would love to give some free software away. And Keith, thank you so much. We learned so much from you tonight, especially you've only had the mat for a few months, and I have loved working with you. And I have loved to have you join me tonight on Tuesday Traces.
It's been a pleasure, and I really appreciate you having me on. As a newbie in this whole thing, I feel honored to that you think I'm worthy already. Like I said, I'm still learning. I think that's what's cool about this whole thing, is that I'm introducing things into my own teaching arsenal, all with the idea of helping people play better golf. And I don't think there's anything that I've added to my skill, my skill set that has been as valuable as this. The first week I had it, I knew it was going to be a huge breakthrough for me as a coach and as a teacher. And so I'm looking forward to only getting better at using it. And so I'll be signing on next week.
Thank you so much. And thanks for letting me dig up a few secrets and entertaining my questions.
I'm impressed at the research you did. That's good.
I know a few people in the golf industry here and there.
I'm learning. Yeah, I'm figuring that out.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Keith, for joining us. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks for our Facebook friends and our Zoom friends. Look forward to hearing from everyone tomorrow. We will send out the recording, and I appreciate everyone joining me tonight and next week when we hopefully have Terry Hashimoto joining us with a long driver. Have a great Tuesday, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. See ya.
Bye.